Gordo, New Mexico.
Okay.
It's where the first atomic bomb was exploded out in the desert.
Mm-hmm. And you got a couple of souvenirs from that.
Yes, it was opened one day a year,
Mm-hmm.
and on the anniversary of the first atomic bomb. And I went out there and picked up pieces of glass where they had bulldozed the glass.
Uh-huh. Just from molten sand?
Molten sand.
Uh-huh. Did you ever take a Geiger counter to those?
Yeah.
And were they still radioactive?
Yeah, but.
So, good afternoon. My name is Janet Kyle Liston. Today is Friday, November the 15th of 2024, and we are here at the Rocky Mountain Regional VA Medical Center in Aurora, Colorado. And today I am interviewing Dr. Ron Garmon, who is my father and who is an Air Force veteran. And this is part of the VA's Remembering Our Veterans program. So, hello and welcome, Dr. Garmon. And Dad, I'd like to start by asking you where you were born.
I was born in the old Presbyterian Hospital in Charlotte, North Carolina on March 13th, 1934.
Mm-hmm. And where were you raised?
At Indian Trail, which was a small village at that time,
Mm-hmm.
of just a few hundred people.
Mm-hmm. And
I went to Indian Trail Elementary and high school.
uh-huh. How big was your class size?
It was about 30 when I was in elementary school, and 19 graduated.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell me your earliest memory from childhood?
My earliest memory was in Norfolk, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And I was playing in a portico in the rocks of a portico on the side of the house with a whiskey bottle cap that could be used as a shot glass. And I was sort of trying to figure out what it was.
And how old were you then?
About 3.
Uh-huh. And you had told me at one point that you knew that you couldn't remember a few days before then, and you were kind of trying to remember that point in your life.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the first thing that I recall.
Mm-hmm. And how many siblings do you have?
2.
And what is the age difference between you and your siblings?
My brother is 4.5 years younger than me, and my sister is 18 years and 4 months younger than me.
Mm-hmm. And how was that growing up with the age differences between you and your siblings?
Well, I was always real small, and my brother was normal size, and we were about the same size, and we were very competitive.
Mm-hmm. Did you play sports together, or how were you competitive?
Well, I only remember one thing that we did in common. We had some chickens that lived outside, and one of the roosters would chase my brother every time he went out of the house. And so I cut him a little stick about 2.5 feet long, about 3/4 of an inch in diameter. And I asked him to let the rooster chase him and then to stop, face the rooster. And the rooster would stop right in front of him and then smack the rooster upside the head with a stick.
How was that working for him?
He did exactly what I told him to do.
Uh-huh.
And he put out the rooster's eye,
Uh-oh.
and that was about all. Didn't have any trouble out of the rooster anymore.
I see. And what about when your sister was born? How old were you then?
I was 18 and 4 months. She was kind of outside my point of view. My mother kept her in the back bedroom,
Uh-huh.
so I didn't have too much to do with her.
Mm-hmm. And how's your relationship with your sister now?
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell me a little bit about school when you were growing up?
I was an indifferent student. I was fourth in my class, so I wasn't too far behind, but I didn't study at all. I got away with that for most things, but not with French. With French, I almost flunked.
Uh-huh. And did you take any other foreign languages or just French?
I took Spanish at one junior college,
Uh-huh.
which I went to after high school.
Uh-huh. And who were the significant people in your life when you were growing up?
Besides my family,
Mm-hmm.
my uncle George and his children, they lived just across the way from us.
Mm-hmm. And tell me a little bit about him.
He was an interesting person. He named himself. My grandparents weren't too swift to name their children.
Mm-hmm.
My father didn't have a name until he was over a year old.
Mm-hmm.
And then a visiting English preacher named him Winfred Lloyd.
Mm-hmm.
But my Uncle George, they didn't name him at all. And when he was 7 or 8 years old, he named himself George Washington Garmon.
Wow. And
But he was an interesting person. He was a carpenter and also a chicken farmer.
uh-huh. And tell me a little bit more about your Uncle George.
When he was 59 years old, he signed a contract with Holly Farms Chickens
Mm-hmm.
to raise 1.2 million eggs, fertilized eggs a week, and to hatch 800,000 of them, and to ship 400,000 to another hatchery.
Mm-hmm.
During the war, he worked as a carpenter because there was a big demand for skilled carpenters those days.
Was that in World War II?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And your father was in World War II as well.
Yes, he was drafted when he was 35 years old
Oh.
and trained for the Battle of Japan, the battle that never came.
Mm-hmm. So what did he do in the military?
He didn't do much of anything but train for the first year or so, and then when the war ended, he helped the people that were in Europe get back.
Get back?
Yeah.
Did you tell me he was out processing people? Is
Yes.
that what his job was?
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about school, when you started school.
I started a year early. My grandfather was on the school board, and so I started a year before I should have.
And I take it they probably didn't have kindergarten back then.
No.
So you started in first grade.
Yes.
And how many people were in your class?
About 25 or 30.
And how many graduated?
19.
Did you work when you were a child?
Yes. When I was 8 years old, 8.5, my mother said, how would you like to go down and help your Aunt Leslie pick cotton? And I said, fine, I'd like to do that. And so I went down, I walked down Highway 74 to her house and picked about 65 pounds of cotton that first day. And then when I went back every other day for about 6 weeks, and was paid 2 cents a pound.
2 cents a pound.
Picking it.
And did you save that money?
Yes, I bought a war bond, that it was called, and I had enough left over to go to the fair.
How was that?
Enjoyed it.
Yeah. Did you work for your Uncle George?
No, I never did. He had a son who was 7 years older than me. And never needed me for anything. He gave me his culled chickens. I would cull them out. He gave them to me, and I would put them in a box with a light and food and water, and would raise them. And I would turn them loose and with the rest of the outside chickens, and my chickens would mature faster than his would. They were eating outside. They were eating bugs and stuff. His were eating chicken food.
Okay. Yeah. And what about helping your father when you were younger?
I started going into the bread company where he was sales manager. Started going in with him when I was about 13, and I would ride the bread trucks of some of the drivers. Was paid about $3 a day for this.
It's better than the cotton picking money. Yeah. So did you deliver the bread?
Yeah.
And what kind of business was your father in?
He worked on a bread truck for many years, and the sales manager was in the service, and he had kept his rank. And so he stayed. He went back in during the Korean War, and Dad was made sales manager.
Uh-huh.
Then later, when he came back, the other fella came back, Dad was going to have to go back on trucks, and he decided to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
So my uncle was selling, my dad's brother was selling vacuum cleaners.
Mm-hmm.
And so he got him selling vacuum cleaners, which he sold very readily.
Mm-hmm. What kind of vacuum cleaner was it?
Electrolux.
It was Electrolux. Huh.
My uncle was the fourth largest selling Electrolux salesman of all time. He sold about 13,000, but he wasn't close to being first. Third was about 16,000. Fourth was about 19,000. Second was about 19,000, and first was about 24,000.
Uh-huh.
But he could sell to people he just met.
Uh-huh.
Dad could sell to his friends, but he couldn't sell to strangers.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about when you were young and first started in school. I know you said that you were really small compared to the other children.
Yep. The bus driver had to get off the bus and lift me up on the first step of the bus.
Mm-hmm. And who was your bus driver?
Can't think of his name. You remember his name?
Wasn't it a relative of ours?
Yes.
Benjamin Stiegel.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my Uncle Benjamin,
Right.
who was on my mother's side.
Right.
But they weren't married yet, I don't think. No. So you didn't realize that he was going to be part of your family?
No.
No. Mm-hmm.
He flew an airplane. He had a Piper Cub, and me and another fellow used to go over and fly with him. Pay him $2 or $3 to take us up.
Okay. Did he let you fly the plane?
Yeah.
How old were you when you did that?
13, 14.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember one time I was trying to make the plane go higher. I was pulling back, and he knocked the stick out of my hand. I was fixing to stall the airplane out.
Oh, okay. That wouldn't have been good. Mm-mm. So what is your favorite childhood memory?
I don't recall any particular memories. During World War II, I would walk up to the store and pick up metal and rubber on the side of the road and cash it in for store owner. He was just having fun with me. I think he would give me candy bars for the metal and stuff.
So a little bit more than you could get with your average war bonds. Yeah. So I guess they were wagers then. Yeah.
I bought a war bond every year for 4 years,
Uh-huh.
and I couldn't bring myself to cash it. And finally, when I proposed to your mother, I cashed those bonds spiral ring,
Mm-hmm.
a small ring, very
Mm-hmm.
small.
Mm-hmm. So, tell me a little bit about your grandfather in the general store when the Depression had ended and the war
Yeah,
was starting.
I didn't know him then, but he ran the general store in Indian Trail. The store still stands. It's an auction house now.
Mm-hmm.
He sold everything from coffins to ice cream, banana splits.
Uh-huh. So, was there anybody in your early childhood who really influenced you or your course in life?
I had some good teachers. Miss Molly Dalton from Hendersonville, North Carolina, was one. She bought chickens when I was raising those chickens I was talking about over Georgia. She bought chickens from me,
Mm-hmm.
black market chickens, because I didn't require a food ticket
Uh-huh.
to buy them.
Mm-hmm. And any specific memories of friends or siblings that you want to share?
My best friend was Thomas Boyd. Thomas had not been with us in the first grade. He was in the Shriners Hospital. He had a bone taken out of his foot, extra bone had grown in there. And he had a bone taken out of his foot.
Mm-hmm. And what did you and Tom like to do together?
Well, just run around mostly. We went to Wingate together.
Mm-hmm.
We roomed together my second year.
Uh-huh. So, when did you graduate high school?
51.
Okay. And then tell me a little bit about your last years in high school and your first years in college.
Well, I had two really good teachers in high school. Mrs. Benton, Gladys Benton. She was an older woman. She had taught my mother and father
Oh.
in the same high school.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Cartner, he was an agricultural teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a World War II veteran, had a good bit of shrapnel in him.
Mm-hmm.
But for a while, I thought I might like to be an agricultural teacher.
Mm-hmm. So you thought about that. Mm-hmm. And where were you living when you went to school at Wingate?
We had moved into town and lived in a housing development called Selwyn Park on
Uh-huh.
Park Road.
And you lived at home for your first 2 years of college, or
I lived in the dorm.
you did? And so tell me about that first 2 years at Wingate College.
Well, my parents were sacrificing so much for me. I felt like working, doing much better than I had been in high school. And I was a B and C student and became an A and B student
Uh-huh.
fairly quickly.
Uh-huh.
I liked chemistry, and Mr. Pollard was a chemistry teacher, and he didn't give me an A, and he said he didn't give many A's.
Uh-huh.
He gave me a B, but I was the top student in the class.
Uh-huh.
And so he asked me if I would teach the lab, be the lab instructor.
Huh.
And I did. Just gave me a chance to really learn stuff. You have to really know it when you're going to be teaching people.
Mm-hmm. So that was in high school or in college?
That was first year of college.
Uh-huh.
They had taught chemistry at Indian Trail before. We had such a small class, I couldn't get enough people
Uh-huh.
to do it.
Mm-hmm. So, what attracted you to Wingate from all the other colleges?
Well, my friend Thomas was going there. It was
Mm-hmm.
a Baptist school, and he was Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cheap. My parents were having a sort of rough time financially.
Mm-hmm.
I got paid $100 for doing the chemistry. That was my second year.
Uh-huh.
But
$100 for the whole year?
Yeah.
Oh, uh-huh. So that was when money was pretty scarce.
Yeah, and they were still under a depression mode.
Uh-huh.
Room and board and tuition was only about $600 a year.
Uh-huh. That's not bad.
In those days.
Was your mother working when you were younger?
Yes, when Dad went in the service, she worked as the running the cafeteria for the school.
Mm-hmm.
She was paid $12 a week. She had 2 assistants. They were paid $9 a week.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like for you growing up during the Second World War?
It was an interesting time when you didn't have to go fight.
Yeah.
When you were just a kid and could keep up with what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the day they announced that Hiroshima had been bombed and that they had developed an atomic bomb.
Mm-hmm.
That was the biggest news
Mm-hmm.
of World War II that I recall.
Yeah. So did you get letters from your father, or how did he communicate with you when he was in
Well,
World War II?
mostly he just wrote to my mother,
Uh-huh.
and he came home fairly often. He was stationed along the Mississippi coast and finally in Lackland, in San Antonio.
Mm-hmm. So, anything else you want to tell me about your childhood?
I learned to shoot a gun early.
Mm-hmm.
My dad bought me a 410 single shot when he went into service,
Uh-huh.
when he was drafted. And I used that to shoot the roosters, and we would half chicken and dumplings
Yeah.
if we didn't have any fryers.
Uh-huh. Did you ever hunt other animals, or?
I did, but I wasn't very successful with it.
Uh-huh. What else did you hunt?
Rabbits and squirrels.
Uh-huh. And tell me a little bit about how you met my mom, Betty.
Well, the first year after I graduated from high school, I went to work. I had worked for Harris.
Mm-hmm. And you can tell us who Harris was, if you want to go into that a little bit.
William T. Harris, founder of Harris Teeter, or part they were responsible for them.
Mm-hmm.
I had worked for them after school on Saturday for a year. I'd worked for them in the summer and then worked for them in a year.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
they formed one of the larger grocery store chains, didn't they?
yeah, and I helped move him out of a small grocery store that he had on. I forget what it was,
Mm-hmm.
but the produce manager asked me if I would work for 75 cents an hour after I graduated from high school, and I told him yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to work for that
Mm-hmm.
and worked a week and drew my paycheck, and they were still paying me 55 cents an hour, which is what I was making after school.
Uh-huh.
So I went to Mr. I can't remember his name, Earnhardt,
Mm-hmm.
the manager of the store, and told him that they had underpaid me. And he said, well, you have to take that up with Mr. Harris.
Huh.
So I told Mr. Harris that he owed me $8.
Uh-huh.
And he said, well, they only paid that 75 cents to full-time workers. And I was planning to go to college, so he wasn't going to give me the 55 cents an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I quit.
Huh.
And went up, answered an ad in the paper, and went up to Cress's and went to work for Cress's.
Uh-huh. And that was another grocery store?
No, that was a 5 and 10.
Okay. 5 and dime store. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one of the workers there introduced me to your mother.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I met her.
And what were your first dates like? What kind of things did you do, and how did you win her over?
We just went to movies. And after the movie, I would take her to Dairy Queen and buy her some ice cream, something.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty tame.
Mm-hmm. When did you realize you were in love with her?
Well, I didn't tell her to wait for me when I went in service, but she sort of did. And she wrote me and I wrote her.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't get a letter 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
And I panicked because I didn't want to live my life without her.
Uh-huh.
And rushed home and proposed to her.
Uh-huh. And that was when you were in the military then?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, what made you choose the Air Force?
An Air Force recruiter came by one day to Wingate, and they let him speak at
Mm-hmm.
Vespers or whatever the thing was called. They met in the mornings,
Mm-hmm.
and he was recruiting for the Air Force cadet program.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, if you made cadet, made flying officer, that you would have a 4-year enlistment. And if you washed out, you would only have a 2-year enlistment. So that looked better to me than Army.
Uh-huh. Was there a draft going on?
Yeah, I was 1A.
Uh-huh. And what does that mean exactly?
they were going to call me up pretty much
Uh-huh.
after I got out of Wingate.
Uh-huh. And so you decided to volunteer instead of be drafted?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And where did you go for basic training?
Well, 3 of us went down for what was basically a mental test. And we flew down, I think, Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina.
Okay.
I went with 2 other guys, and I was the only one that passed that.
Uh-huh.
They said you needed a IQ of at least 120 to pass.
Uh-huh.
So then I went for a physical later.
Mm-hmm.
I passed the physical pretty well, but my left eye was about 20/35.
Mm-hmm.
So after I went in and I was given more tests, but the Korean War ceasefire was signed 3 weeks before I was taken in August 14th, 1953.
Mm-hmm. And so you were still a volunteer. Did you have the option to not go in, or were you pretty committed at that point in time?
Committed.
Mm-hmm. So,
So anyway, after I'd been in for about 2 months, the word came down to retest and eliminate 40% of my class based on tighter physicals.
uh-huh.
So they tested me for eyesight again. The doctor told me, said, you can squint and maybe pass the thing, but I had never tried to squint. I never needed to squint since my other eye was 20/20. And so anyway, I flunked out of the officer program then and served the rest of my time as an airman.
Mm-hmm. And what was the highest rank you achieved?
Airman 2nd class.
Mm-hmm. And where all were you stationed?
Well, the cadet program was carried out at Lackland Air Force Base
Mm-hmm.
in Texas near San Antonio. And it was pretty much all training.
Uh-huh.
I was in a graduate basic outfit for a while after I flunked out of the cadet program.
Mm-hmm.
And then they gave me a list of things I could train for.
Uh-huh.
And all of them except drafting school would have required me to sign up for more time.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to sign up for more time. I wanted to start college in the fall of 53,
Uh-huh.
55.
Mm-hmm.
If I was going to flunk out. And so I signed up for drafting school. They didn't send me to drafting school. They just sent me to a drafting job.
Sounds like the service sometimes.
And they gave me a little on-the-job training, but not much.
Uh-huh.
So they didn't need a draftsman for their everything they had.
Uh-huh.
So whenever the word came down, send one airman out here to pick up trash, it was me.
So what was your MOS supposed to be? Your title, job title in the military?
It was just draftsman.
Uh-huh. And they never changed your work title?
No,
So what bases were you stationed at?
just after Lackland, I went to Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I left the service from. So I was only stationed in those two places.
So where was Holloman? Is that
Alamogordo, New Mexico.
okay?
It's where the first atomic bomb was exploded out in the desert.
Mm-hmm. And you got a couple of souvenirs from that.
Yes, it was opened one day a year,
Mm-hmm.
and on the anniversary of the first atomic bomb. And I went out there and picked up pieces of glass where they had bulldozed the glass.
Uh-huh. Just from molten sand?
Molten sand.
Uh-huh. Did you ever take a Geiger counter to those?
Yeah.
And were they still radioactive?
Yeah, but not much.
Not much. Uh-huh. And what was the most exciting thing about being in the service?
It was exciting to me to be out there in the desert. I'd never lived in that sort of atmosphere, so it was just kind of neat.
Mm-hmm. And what did you like about Alamogordo?
The Mexican food was great.
Uh-huh.
They fried their tacos after they put them together,
Uh-huh.
and they were delicious.
Mm-hmm. Was that your favorite dish there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And tell me when you decided to propose.
When I didn't get a letter.
So,
I wasn't gonna let it quit. Then I was.
uh-huh. So, and you've got pictures and a story to tell about, bringing my mom out and getting married. Do you want to go ahead and share that now?
Yeah. A friend of mine had gotten married in the service. I was his best man.
Uh-huh.
And they were having a good time. They were enjoying each other. So I decided to do it too.
Mm-hmm.
And he was my best man. His name was Dean Kleck. And his wife was Carol, and she was Betty's bridesmaid.
Mm-hmm.
And I just went into town and asked Presbyterian preacher to marry us, and he did.
Mm-hmm.
All the guys from my drafting room came to the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fair, nice. We didn't have any food or other. things, but
Mm-hmm. Do you want to show the pictures of your wedding? Just take some time for you to get that and show some pictures of Mom when she was younger.
yeah, well, that's Betty.
Okay.
60.
And I'll let you take those out of the book and you can hold them up to the camera. Suzanne's going to give you a hand with that.
Let's put it up here. I want to drop this.
Yeah.
That's my wife when she's
Hold it up a little higher. Perfect.
16 years old.
And what is the bottom picture? Who are those three guys in the bottom picture?
That's two of her uncles
Okay.
and me.
And
what
which one
year-
is
Were
you?
you already married at that time?
No, I don't think so.
Which one is you?
Where are you?
I don't know. Maybe I was taking the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got that too.
Okay. And anything you want to remark about on those pictures?
I have here a statement I made. It said, at about this time, my uncle A.B. began telling me that I was destined to live a wonderful life. He was right.
Mm-hmm.
I
Oh,
have lived a wonderful life.
good.
Yeah. You really have, Dad. Do you have some pictures of the chapel that you want to show us? Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is some pictures from our wedding.
Hold it up a little. Hold it up again.
Slip down a little. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. And where was that church at?
It was on the base
Base
chapel.
chapel.
And we went back 20 years later, and it was the library.
Huh?
We told people that's where we got married.
Mm.
Anything else?
What did you do for your honeymoon?
We didn't have a honeymoon. I didn't have any money.
Uh-huh. But you went to some interesting places and had some pictures of White Sands, New Mexico.
Yeah.
And are those in your photos, or they might be towards the front, Suzanne?
Yeah, White Sands National Monument was just 15 miles from the Air Force Base.
Mm-hmm.
So we would go there for picnics and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting place.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you get married housing after you got married?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And describe that to me a little bit.
It was one room
Uh-huh.
and wasn't very fancy at all.
Uh-huh.
But the PX was nice. Brass steaks were less than $1 a pound.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ate lots of steaks.
Uh-huh. Did you have your own kitchen?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And was it like a little efficiency
Yeah.
apartment? So you didn't have to share a kitchen or bathrooms with anybody else?
No.
Okay. Yeah. So, what other fun memories do you have about being in the service?
We would go to El Paso, and Juarez was part of El Paso in Mexico, where it was called Juarez.
Uh-huh.
And Juarez was an interesting place. We went to watch bullfighters.
Uh-huh. That's cool.
Drink beer,
Uh-huh.
and buy a steak dinner for $1.35.
Mm-hmm. So were you off on the weekends?
Yeah,
Okay. That sounds good. And were you also in Albuquerque, or did you just visit Albuquerque?
I just visited that.
Uh-huh. And now, you were in the military about the time Chuck Yeager was doing some of the experiments that he did, weren't you?
He was a little earlier than me,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a fellow who planned to jump from be the highest air parachute jumper of all time, and he came by the drafting room, and I met him. He took a balloon up to about 100,000 feet,
Wow.
and he had planned to then drop his cabin that he rode up there, and to go on up another 20,000, and to parachute from 120,000. But
It's pretty
he
crazy.
didn't actually do that. I saw on television what he actually did. He just jumped from the 105,000 or so.
Mm-hmm. How was the landing for him?
He didn't pull his parachute until about 15,000 feet, so
Uh-huh.
it was just a normal jump from
Okay.
point.
Were there any other interesting experiments going on in Alamogordo when you're there?
Well, they were testing a couple of fighters, and these had been made by Boeing or somebody. They were never going to be used, but they still tested them rigorously. And when they took off from the airfield, they rattled. Our apartment was about a mile from the airfield, and it broke glasses, tumblers that were in our kitchen.
Wow. It's pretty wild.
The drafting room was only about a block away from the flight path, so it was much louder there.
Mm-hmm. And anything other that was particularly humorous when you were in the military?
I wouldn't say it was humorous, but I pulled a lot of KP.
Uh-huh.
The firemen made up about half of our unit, which was called air installations,
Uh-huh.
and they were exempt from KP. So the rest of us pulled about double. Most of the airmen on the base pull KP every 6 months, but I got it every 3 months.
Oh, okay. And that was one day at a time, or was it
It was a week
a
at a
week?
time.
Oh,
week.
wow.
It had been 2 weeks and then changed
Huh.
before I started.
Uh-huh. So you got to see the insides of the how they made the dinners and everything, huh? Yeah. When you were leaving the service, were you awarded any special medals or commendations?
No,
Okay. And what was it like transitioning out of the military and back into civilian life for you?
well, I we did interesting things. My friend Thomas Boyd came out, and he and Betty, her mother, and I toured the country. We went around the country clockwise, drove across the desert, painted desert, and the petrified forest into Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
and then up to about Bakersfield. We went to the Sequoia National Park.
Mm-hmm. Do you
Yeah.
have a picture of the Sequoia National Park with you?
I don't know.
I thought we had one of those.
Hey,
Uh-huh. And was that back when you were allowed to drive through one of the trees? Yeah. Here we go.
yes, but
I'll hold it up for you. And then this is the other picture on the other side. There's a picture of you guys sitting on the trunk of the tree, it looks like, right here. Mm-hmm. We got it. So, and after you went to the Sequoias, where did you go next?
went to Bakersfield, and then we started kind of across to Las Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
and then we went to South Dakota where we saw the Crazy Horse Monument
So that was already being built at that time?
being built.
Huh.
We went back 40 years later.
Uh-huh.
They hadn't done too much. Indian was showing he was pointing. They did his arm pretty well and did his head.
Uh-huh.
They still had the horse to do and all that part underneath.
Right. Did you see the National Monument when you were driving through the Dakotas?
Yeah, we went to several national parks.
Mm-hmm. And which one was your favorite?
I think Devil's Tower was my favorite thing that I saw out there.
Yeah.
We went back to see it 25 years later.
Mm-hmm. And I saw that with you about
Yeah, you
7 years ago. Something like that.
more than that, I think.
Uh-huh. So, what else did you see on your trip? Did you go to the East Coast as well?
No, we went to Michigan, and I looked at that made bricks that were really concrete blocks that looked like bricks.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of interested in doing that maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we went from Michigan, we drove pretty much down to North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. And where did you decide to settle in North Carolina at that time?
Well, I decided to continue my education
Uh-huh.
get a BS in chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
So we lived in Chapel Hill.
Uh-huh. And was that your trailer that you lived in?
Yeah, we,
That you have a picture of that to
uh,
show us?
I don't know. Any idea where it is?
I think it was on the reverse of one of those pages that you already showed. It's a picture of the trailer that they were living in. So while she finds that, I'll ask you a little bit more. So, so you were living in Chapel Hill, and were you working at the time, or did you just decide to become a full-time student?
I went out looking for a job in 1956 after 1 year
Uh-huh.
of school. Couldn't find anything. About the only job available was measuring tobacco fields. And the good fields had already been picked up by other people. I couldn't make any money that way, and so I decided to just work in school for that summer.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a calculus course
Uh-huh.
and a CRIP course that I knew that I wouldn't have a lot of time to
Mm-hmm.
work on it.
Did you have a GI Bill back then?
Yep.
And you were able to use that to support your school?
Yeah.
And did that pay for your whole education or just the bachelor's?
It paid for about 1 year of graduate school.
Mm-hmm. And when did you decide that you were interested in chemistry?
After going to those classes in 56, in 57, I started looking earlier. And a friend of mine was in dental school, and he was working for Liggett and Myers
Mm-hmm.
in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So I went over to Liggett and Myers and applied for a job and got it.
Mm-hmm. And Leggett and Myers was a cigarette company.
Yes.
Uh-huh. And I know you have an interesting story about being there, making the globes for the mentholated cigarettes. Can you tell me a bit about that?
I don't recall.
Okay. I think you blew the glass that they used to mentholate the cigarettes with.
My first job, Liggett and Myers ran 4 tests on tobacco that they could buy in an auction type thing.
Mm-hmm.
They were amino nitrogen, total nitrogen, nicotine, and sugars.
Uh,
So we were sitting around waiting on our assignments when this man came in, and it was can't remember his name, but he was he headed up the analytical chemistry part, and he said, "Who has the most chemistry?"
mm-hmm.
And my friend Joe Craig said, "Garmon by a long shot."
Uh-huh.
And he said, "Good, come with me, Garmon. We're going to let you work in research." Took me in his office, showed me a method for measuring menthol in a single cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
He said that we know this doesn't work because we only find about 20% of what we're putting in. So I'd like you to look it over and see if you can figure out what's wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first year's work at Lincoln Myers.
Uh-huh.
And what they put the cigarette and 200 milliliters of ethanol in a wearing blender and blended it, and then put 2 milliliters of that into a little vessel and heated that with an oven that went around the tube. And then sent it downstream and trapped it. And I immediately realized that menthol has such a high vapor pressure that we weren't trapping it.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did, what I blew in glassware was a trap to trap it.
Uh-huh. I guess that was always interesting to me and my older sister because we both have glass hobbies. So, so then just kind of recap your school years and when you graduated, and tell me a little bit about your thesis and what your final degree was.
Well, I started with a BS in chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
I'd only had that one course at Wingate in chemistry. That was all that was offered.
Uh-huh.
So I started almost from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And then what about your master's degree?
I didn't get a master's. I went
Oh, you didn't?
straight to PhD.
I didn't know that was possible.
They didn't. They offered a master's at Carolina, but very few people took one.
Mm-hmm. So you were at UNC Chapel Hill. And when did you decide to go forward with the PhD program?
About my senior year.
Mm-hmm.
I was making good grades and everybody expected me to go for a doctorate.
Mm-hmm. And what is your degree in?
It's in analytical chemistry.
Uh-huh.
I was fortunate. The American Chemical Society did a questionnaire of what people thought was the best analytical department. And Minnesota won it. That's the school of Kolthoff, and Kolthoff virtually invented analytical chemistry. He was about 90 years old at this time I met him.
Mm-hmm.
But Carolina was second, and that
Oh.
was because of Dr. Riley.
Uh-huh.
He was an excellent teacher.
So he was one of your professors?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Took several courses under him.
Mm-hmm. And what was your thesis on?
It was based sort of on the second year that I worked for Liggett Myers. They asked me to measure the amount of glycolic acid that had been produced when they had exposed tobacco to this reagent. And if there was any water in there, it would form glycolic acid.
Mm-hmm.
And glycolic acid is a terrible thing to put in a cigarette because it gives off it's converted to oxalic acid, which forms calcium oxalate,
Kidney stones.
which blocks the arteries.
Uh-huh.
So they needed to know if it was in there.
Mm-hmm. Did you find it in the cigarettes? Or
Yeah.
uh-huh.
And when I was doing it, I was running a standard and also a blank along with the samples.
Mm-hmm.
And it was being developed, the acid solution with the reagent.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned the the standard oxalic acid, or oxalic, the standard glycolic acid turned dark quicker than the sample.
Mm-hmm.
But then the sample got darker than the standard.
Mm-hmm.
So it was obvious that there was something else in there reacting.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Williams, he said, put it through a silica gel column in this fairly standard method and see what you get.
Mm-hmm.
So I put it through a silica gel column and I eluted it with first just a hydrocarbon and then an ether and alcohol and then water,
Uh-huh.
and found two things. And one of them was glycolic and the other one was diglycolic acid.
Well, so is that part of the reason you think that cigarettes cause cancer and heart attacks?
No,
No?
no, because once they found out how much glycolic was in there, they didn't pursue it.
Okay.
So would you say they did not pursue it, it was because they didn't want anybody to know?
Well, they just didn't want to kill anybody.
But yet it was still there, but they didn't pursue how much was there, and I'm not sure why they didn't pursue it.
I'm trying to figure out why they were looking at it in the first place.
But then they found something bad, and they're like, oh, we're not going to do this anymore, and it's like that.
Yeah, when they found out how much glycolic was present, they just forgot it.
Okay. So do you feel like they kind of swept it under the rug?
No,
No?
no, they didn't. They didn't have any reason to pursue it. I'm trying to figure out why in the world they were studying. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, talk to me about your occupation after you graduated. Where did you work?
Well, let's get back to my thesis.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I looked at how fast glycolic was, and diglycolic was much slower, and that explained the results I had. And I thought about how could one do it without this exhaustive work that I had put in
Uh-huh.
on separating it.
Uh-huh.
And I decided there was a way to do it kinetically.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think too much of this idea. But Dr. Riley one day asked me, he said, "Are you ready to talk about your research?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I went in and gave this talk to him and the rest of the guys in the office, and he was very impressed with this idea for my research. And so this is what I did. And I did a few more things along the same lines, but this was essentially it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, where did you go for work after you finished your PhD?
This company called Chemstrand had just built a real nice stainless steel and glass laboratory out in a research triangle.
Mm-hmm. And the research triangle is Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, just
Yeah.
for clarification.
And the research park is located in that triangle.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the idea of working there in something, and so I applied for work in that laboratory.
Uh-huh. And were you working more with the steel or with the glass at the time?
One of my first assignments was to measure the N groups in a polymer. And this sort of became a hobby of mine, was measuring N groups on polymers. And I devised techniques for all the polymers we made.
Mm-hmm.
I started with this polymer that was a aromatic polyamide similar to Kevlar.
Uh-huh.
And I developed a number of methods for N groups on particular polymers.
Mm-hmm.
And the best one that I developed was one for the carboxyl N groups in polyester, which was particularly good for tire cord because tire cord made a lot of difference. The carboxyl N groups made a lot of difference in the stability of the tire cord
Mm-hmm.
in tires.
Mm-hmm. So you were working with rubber tires, and you also worked with textiles. Is that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so Kim Strand changed names a couple of times, and they kind of changed around with what they were producing, didn't they?
They went out of business.
Mm-hmm.
They got down to one customer, and he could just sort of dictate what he'd pay for it.
Uh-huh. Monopoly. Yeah. And so then what was the next place that you worked for?
That was it. I retired from Monsanto.
Uh-huh. And that was the old Monsanto. You might want to explain the difference of the two companies.
Well, they just took a lot of their less profitable companies and split it into two companies, one called Solution.
Mm-hmm.
And I never worked for Solution, but I retired from Solution according to Monsanto.
Mm-hmm. What age were you when you retired?
62.
Mm-hmm. And tell me what kinds of hobbies you enjoyed after you were out of the military and out of school.
Golf was the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
When I went down to Decatur, Alabama, I bought a house on a golf course and played about every other day.
Mm-hmm.
During the 15 years or so that I worked there, I would play 7 holes after work most days.
Uh-huh.
And then after I retired, I rented a cart and started playing every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I played golf for 25 years.
So were you pretty good at golf? Did you ever get a hole in one?
I got 6 of them.
6 of them. And was that on different golf courses or?
Mostly it was on the course I lived on, but it was on some other courses too.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And what else did you enjoy doing?
Duplicate bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Played that for many years. Started in the 1950s and ended in 2020.
Mm-hmm. And tell me about one of the amazing once in a lifetime experiences that you've had.
Once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have had one like once in a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Playing golf one time, I had an eagle on 13. This is over in Scottsboro. A birdie on 14 and another eagle on 15.
Wow.
The first eagle was a hole in one.
Mm-hmm.
The second one was a par 5, and I reached the green in 2 and then sank a 30-foot putt for a eagle.
Wow. So is that your best game ever?
Those were my best 3 holes.
Yeah. And I know you also like books. Tell me a little bit about your ability to remember things.
I don't think it's exceptional.
You don't? Okay. Have you ever had your IQ tested?
No.
You haven't? I know you said that they were looking at that when you were a cadet. How do you feel like your military service affected your life?
I don't think it did. It was just a interlude mostly that I took care of.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything about your service that you particularly want for your family and friends to remember you by?
No.
No? Okay. And is there anything that you miss about being in the military?
I think if I hadn't flunked out of cadets, I might have made a career of it.
Really? Mm-hmm. And is there anything about the service that you wish you had just left behind and didn't do besides KP?
I really didn't. I never achieved any great skill at drafting.
Okay. And is there anything that you wish more civilians knew about being in the military and the service in general?
Well, to me, I was just putting in time.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people like my son-in-law. He was a chief in the Navy
Uh-huh.
on a nuclear submarine.
Mm-hmm.
He operated a nuclear reactor and he went all over the world.
Uh-huh.
And he was really proud of his military service,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't.
Yeah. In terms of your whole life journey, your experience now, what do you want people to most remember about you?
Well, I had a good job. I was in charge of all the analytical in the building for about 15 years,
Uh-huh.
and then for about 15 years in another building.
Mm-hmm. Did you like being a manager?
I wasn't manager. I worked without any professional help for 2 or 3 years.
Uh-huh.
So I provided the analytical services
Uh-huh.
the guys needed.
And is there anything that we haven't covered that you would really like to go over in this interview?
Yeah.
And Suzanne, do you have any questions? Or Anit?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to what made you decide for your career choice. And we talked about it just very briefly.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I think teaching that chemistry lab at Wingate,
Yeah.
I think that was part of it. And then
Was it the teaching part that you liked, or just the whole using your brain, being able to figure things out, or was it a little bit of both?
yeah, after I went to Carolina, I'd been kind of wasting my time, I felt like, in the military. and my wife was working. And I really buckled down, and I was virtually a straight A student. I made 1B. And just putting that much work in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so how long did you work once you graduated from college and you got credentialed? How long did you work the job? You said you retired at age 62?
Yeah, it was a 34-year career.
That was pretty long.
Yeah.
And in that career, do you think you did and explored and experienced all the kind of things you wanted to experience, or do you wish it would have lasted longer?
I really would have liked to have worked longer.
Yeah, that's what I kind of thought.
I got 3 big bonuses, and the first one was the biggest, and I was 5 years from it when I retired.
Oh, wow.
And the retirement was based on the best 3 of your last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I just couldn't afford not to take it.
Yeah, it was a financial decision.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it really,
Mm-hmm.
I could have worked 10 more years and not gotten as much money as I did.
Yeah, because you were pretty young at age 62 to retire, and that's what made me think about that and wanted to ask that question. So
Mm-hmm.
I think you made a good move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think my longevity is based on golf. I played.
Could be doing what you love. That's true. And then one other question I had was, how was it? How was it with this woman, volunteer sitting next to you? How did she help you in your life? She's a very helpful person. I know that.
Well, she's always been there, and she's always been a success at her own doings. I came out to visit several times. She provided me with my only grandchildren.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can see how you two are similar,
Mm-hmm.
and it's great to learn that today. And I really enjoyed meeting you and listening to this interview. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anit, did you have any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you, Dad. I appreciate it. I'm glad that you did this interview, and we're going to have this loaded up on a YouTube channel, and everybody that you wish to share this with can get a copy of it and can see your legend over time. So if you don't have anything else to add, we'll end here.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.